Good people, what is going on? Another episode of the All Go Podcast. I'm your host, Desmond. Going to continue the division predictions that I want to do, while we're kind of in a bit of a downtime. The last one I did, you can see on the channel, is NFC North, which I went through that preview as well. Want to go to the AFC North today and talk about who I think is going to win it. I think with the AFC North, you've got obviously the Cleveland Browns, you got the Cincinnati Bengals, the Steelers, and the Ravens. To me, I think it's pretty straightforward. Cleveland is going to be the worst team in that division. They were last year. They have made some steps to try to improve their quarterback situation because they clearly had the worst one last year in the division. And I don't think they've solved it. I think they've taken some steps to try to solve it with drafting, Dylan Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders. They brought in Kenny Pickett as well as Joe Flacco. So they've taken some steps, but I'm not sure it's been solved. None of those guys, as it stands today, is the answer. I would bet that you should probably go Shedeur with just either Shedeur or Dylan Gabriel. Go with one of the young guys because that way, number one, they're super cheap. It's a cost-controlled contract, and both of those guys were, 5th and 7th round picks? So what you have to pay them is so low, and then you can build around them, assuming they're adequate and can kind of go from there. But that would be the number 4 team that I would have in AFC North. The number 3 team, I'm going to go with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I know they just picked up Aaron Rodgers, and he wasn't great when the Jets needed him to be great, especially early on in that season. Later on in that year, he was solid. He wasn't great, wasn't bad. He was solid. But I think for what the Steelers need, they just need somebody to be solid. Now, part of the issue with the Steelers is the TJ Watt contract extension talks. Who knows if that's going to get done? I would imagine yes, but who knows? They just shipped out, George Pickens. Not that those guys are on the same level, but it's interesting. And there's seemingly a lot of work to be done before they get to that point. And then, is the DK Metcalf to Aaron Rodgers connection gonna go well? Who knows? I would imagine so, but also for as athletic and pretty good of a receiver that DK Metcalf is, he didn't have a ton of production like last year. I think he had just over 900 yards last year, which for a guy as talented as him, you would imagine, 12, 13, 1,400 yards plus. And, he didn't have that. He has before. But even with, Geno was a pretty solid, really, I would say above average quarterback. Geno was pretty good with Seattle. So it's interesting that DK didn't have that type of production while he was there. So it'll be interesting to see. They just traded for, as we all know, Jonnu Smith along with the Jalen Ramsey trade. Ideally, you get TJ Watt under contract. You've got some weapons. Freiermuth, Darnell Washington, the tight end, the humongous tight end from Georgia. So they've got some guys where you could see that working and going well. But the 2 biggest keys is going to be the O-line. Can they protect? And then Aaron Rodgers. He's got to play well for them to make the playoffs. I would imagine they're probably in the 8-9 wins. Would be my prediction, my guess. I don't think they're going to be amazing by any stretch, but we shall see. Second place in the division, which is interesting because the last 2 years, this team did not make the playoffs, which is kind of wild to think about. And that's the Cincinnati Bengals. They missed the playoffs this past season. They missed the playoffs the season before. I know 2 years ago, Joe Burrow was hurt for stretches of the season. That was when we had the Jake Browning experience where he played pretty well at different times in the year, but he's a backup quarterback. He's a guy that you're going to need to, who can come in and keep the ship afloat for two games. But anything past that, you're asking for a lot and probably too much from a backup quarterback. But it's interesting because they won, I think, 9 games last year. Everyone knows the defense was pretty bad, pretty atrocious. And your number one sack man in Trey Hendrickson, your pass rusher, is holding out. I mean, he came to minicamp in street clothes just to talk to reporters and just say, hey, this has been a disaster, basically. Now, feelings get removed once you start talking about money and putting money up, right? So if they're going to tell Trey Hendrickson they'll pay him $40 million a year, I'm sure his feelings will be in a much the morale will be boosted for sure. But until then, it's not great. And then a guy that you either drafted to replace Hendrickson or a guy that you wanted to pair with Hendrickson in Shamar Stewart, your first-round draft pick, did not participate in camp either. So not great, but what I am going to put faith in is Joe Burrow and his ability to be able to hopefully get out to a fast start, which has been basically the opposite of what they've done. I think in basically all of his time there with the Bengals, it's either been like a 0-3 or 1-3 start. Like it's been pretty bad, and they've been able to dig out of those holes for a couple years, but the past 2 years they weren't able to dig out of those holes. So yeah. So I'm gonna put some confidence in old Joe Burrow and that he can get that team to the playoffs. Especially if the defense can't get it together. I'm not gonna say that they have a shot to win the AFC. Like I get it, I truly do. But when they were in that AFC Championship game and won it and went to the Super Bowl, that was a long time ago. So I'm not gonna. They got some work to do, especially, like I said, with Hendrickson and Shamar Stewart. They got to get that figured out. And the team that I think is going to win the dang division is the Ravens. I think their roster, top to bottom, is they've got some players everywhere. Obviously, Derrick Henry's addition last year was monumental. He rushed for almost 2,000 yards. I think it was 1921 or something like that as far as his what he rushed for. Lamar is pretty consistently, has been pretty darn good in the regular season. He's had his struggles have typically come in the playoffs. But as far as regular season and winning that division, I mean, I just see him doing well and doing his normal that he's basically done since he started second half of his rookie year. Zay Flowers, I think Bateman is, on the rehab, rehabbing. I think he was injured last year, but Flowers has been terrific. Mark Andrews, coming back, and I think they do a pretty darn good job O-line wise. So I think they'll be fine. It'll be another year in Todd Monken's system that that Lamar will be there, which is always a good thing to have that continuity with your offensive coordinator. And then defensively, they got Roquan Smith, Kyle Hamilton. They did not, I don't think they re-signed Clowney. So not quite sure there, but Marlon Humphrey. I mean, they've got guys, on every level and all over the place. And they're just, John Harbaugh, defense is that's just how he rolls and that's what he does. So yeah, that's how I think the AFC North will turn out. Baltimore winning it, Bengals second in the division, Steelers third, and Cleveland fourth. So let me know your thoughts. Greatly appreciate it. Peace.